Welcome to episode 31 of the FreoBigfootyPodcast. This week we'll be reviewing the game against Port Adelaide last week, where Fremantle put in a pretty manful effort for 3 quarters before fading away to a rampant Port Adelaide and going down by 18 points. Before we'll have a quick look at the Peel game from last week and have a quick review of that, look at the ins and outs, and obviously the big upcoming game against Geelong, where we will see our glorious captain bring up his 300th game, and hopefully he'll also bring up his 600th goal. And we'll also hopefully get the trifecta and celebrate it with a victory. Joining us this week is our resident Victorian guru, Seppo. How are you, mate?
Oh, I'm very good and really looking forward to this game. It's been a highlight of my fixture this year to see Pab plays big games, so I'm really looking forward to this one.
Absolutely, and also joining us from after a couple of sunny weeks up in the Gold Coast area, Valkorum. How are you, mate? Thanks for joining us.
Not too bad. Thanks for having me back. I'm happy I was able to organise my holiday, unfortunately over the Derby, but to be back and available for Pav's 300. There for Pav.
Absolutely, and it's seems like the game was a very quick sellout, and hopefully all those people who aren't able to go to the game this week do give their tickets away, because it'd be great to see a huge crowd there for his final, or for his celebrationary game, and hope that Fremantle can do the game justice as well. Last week we saw, as I said, it was a tight game for 3 quarters before Port Adelaide pulled away for a 13-goal, 16 behind 94 to Fremantle 11-goal, 10-76. Port had 29 scoring shots to 21. Fremantle were up by a little bit at 5 points at 3-quarter time, but just sort of ran out of a bit of steam at the end with Hill coming off with a bit of a knee knock, and but in the end, I thought there was quite a few good signs there. Seppo, what did you think of the game? Even though it was disappointing to lose, I thought it wasn't a terrible performance by any stretch.
Yeah, well, when I went across for this game, it was a sort of a daunting prospect, knowing that Port is such a strong finishing team. I thought if we're going to be any chance, we've really got to be able to stick with them for most of it. And it sort of panned out that way. The margin was sort of where I thought it might be if we didn't actually manage to pull off the victory. So I was glad we actually pegged back a couple of few late, because it was sort of looked like a big blowout. But it was great to see that second and even a bit of the third quarter where we really was sort of getting back to our best. But you could just see right in that last quarter that Adelaide got the run on, and some of their big players like Robbie Gray and Wingard just absolutely dominated, and it was just quick succession of goals that really just blew us out of the water. And it's a bad result, but providing we can turn around this week, it's Port really deserved the win on the day.
And did you manage to catch the game, Valkorum, at all?
Unfortunately, not live. I was stuck in a place called Mullumbimby, which I had no access to Foxtel, and the only game on Channel 7, unfortunately, was GWS and those people that drink champagne and think they're really awesome.
Yeah,
so no, I wasn't able to watch it live, but I have managed to go back and watch the game. I think the key word for me for the game is fumbles. So much fumbling from our team, from our players during that game. Every time, there's a chance for a good little handball and a breakaway, we'd fumble the ball, or we'd handball it at their head, or it was just those little things that stopped us from breaking out of the congestion, which played into Port's favour, because they were killing us in the contested ball, and then the outside runners were streaking away.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the things a lot this year. Hasn't really been our clean hands. A lot of the time we have had a lot of fumbles, as you're saying, Valkorum. And it's not just obviously been in this game, but a lot of the times where last year were sort of one touch, make the right decision. This year there seems to be a little bit more fumbling. I don't know whether, I know even last week they were talking about with, when Barlow was still talking about trying to, or I think it was Fife maybe on the couch was talking about they're still trying to revamp the game plan a little bit, but 9 weeks in, you'd hope to see that they would have started to move in the right direction in that regard. And I don't know whether they're trying to think a little bit too much and causing the fumbles, but it's certainly not as clean as it was last year.
No, I mean, you look at the fact that for 3 quarters of the game, we're in the game, and we're in front for a good portion of pretty much most of the second and third quarter, and then it's just they blew us away in the fourth. But I mean, considering that we didn't play, to be perfectly honest, we didn't play well. And we're still, that 1 to 2 goals, 6 to 12 points difference, up and down for most of the second and third quarter. I still think that's encouraging signs. I mean, we're playing poorly when you try to compare it to last year, which is all you can really compare against. We're playing poorly compared to that, but we're still in games. We're just not in games for 4 quarters, and that's what's killing us. As Ross Lyon would say, you're out by 1%, you lose.
Yeah.
It's really sort of showed that we did a lot of things right. Like there were some things that were sort of playing into our favour, and Zach Clark is starting to get goals on the scoreboard, and that's what we've wanted from him. So that went well. In terms of selection,
he's had an interest. He had a silly, music festival incident in pre-season, and that's obviously going to hamper his run into the season. So he's starting to come. I think he's played well the last 2 weeks, to be honest.
So we really didn't utilise Pav that well, and I know we haven't been fallen to the trap of being too Pav centric, and now we've almost gone away from him and not capitalising on it. And he only kicked, I think, 1 goal. But the good thing is that without Dawson and McFarlane, the way that Silvani stepped up and Johnson played, it was really good to see that we sort of blanketed Westhoff and Schultz, and unfortunately it was the others that sort of bobbed up. But it was great to see that the selections, we got it right. It was a bit odd to see Clancy Pearce come on the sub that didn't really provide too much. And Paul Subban copped that knock early, but seemed to fire him up for a bit. But it was sort of good to see that, like you just mentioned before, that there's a huge scope for improvement. If we played like that and we're still in it for so long, that just imagine when we start to get some of these guys back into the side and turn around to form of guys like Spur and Duffield and Main that have sort of had years of better years in the past, and huge scope for improvement.
That was actually quite interesting. I thought Duffield's kicking was probably the poorest I've ever seen him on the weekend.
Those 2 shanks out in the full from defence was just an absolute shocker. But he's better than that. So I don't know if it's going to take a drop to the waffle to the wake up call again. But
like he did, like Ross did to Ibo a couple of years back. But that's you don't see that from Duffield. I mean,
even the week before he ran at 100% efficiency.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, as you said, it was the first time that we've been at the ground as well, so that may have, as you said, it's not there. But as you said, it must be frustrating for Ross Lyon as well, because, I mean, as you said, you can see a lot of the right things are happening, but then we just haven't been able to put 4 quarters together all season. And I think we're still struggling to find that right mix down. A lot of those small forwards from the opposition are still hurting us. And I don't know whether that's because our delivery, our work rate up in the midfield and getting the ball back with our third man ups. I mean, that does hurt us when, particularly when we've had a couple of guys out, because Johnson plays that role so much better. And I know Mzungu did it pretty manfully last week, but he's certainly nowhere near the same class as Johnson in doing that. And
although I think he's a better marker than Johnson, though.
Mzungu's very good overhead.
Yeah. And I thought he did a pretty reasonable job. So it'll be interesting to see which way they go this week. And we'll touch on that a bit more when we get to the Geelong game. But, we just haven't been able to have, as you said, that 4-quarter performance. And, I think the thing we'll see, obviously, Pearce and Crozier, we'll get to the ins and outs a little bit. But Crozier in particular has probably been a little bit disappointing, I think. Those people who watched him in the pre-season game at Subi in particular, he really looked like he was going to take the next step this year. And with Walters going out, really had an opportunity to stamp himself. And, probably 4 weeks in, probably hasn't, certainly hasn't hit the scoreboard, or just, hasn't shown some of the sort of glimpses of talent that we have seen at times, probably through the pre-season and last year even.
I read that on the forums today. I mean, I'm not surprised that Crozier's been dropped. It's probably a good thing to put him into the waffle and give him a chance to find some form, get a bit of the ball. It just seems that the pace is too quick for him. He just seems to be slow, and I don't remember him being a slow person.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think it's so much slow, but you're right. His decision making is just half a second too slow, and a couple of times, particularly in congestion, he's just been caught with a ball. And you're right. It's not.
And then it's a rushed kick or it's a rushed handball, and 50% of the time, that's what it feels like. It's turning into a turnover.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as you said, probably just as you said, Clancy Pearce probably hasn't shown enough out there. And Lee Spur's probably just not having the same impact he had last year either, and struggling a little bit. So hopefully, as as you said, we'll see. Ibbotson will hopefully be pushing himself back in for a spot there, and it's up to those guys to push ahead. So
But I thought Maine played well, presenting wise. He was take some pretty good strong marks over the weekend too, from memory.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add about this one, Seppo?
Well, the thing you can really see that we're trying to shift a couple of players around to the forward line to fill the gap that Walters, and it's pretty understated how big that gap is with another smaller forward, or at least another marking target. It's you can see when Fife's gone forward, he's looked dangerous, and I don't see too many other players be able to do what Walters does up there, and it's sort of getting back to what Crozier was in there for. So really hope that Maine can get back to his best and have other guys other than Pav and Clark that are there to kick goals, because it's certainly hurting us, and we're not going to win enough games if we don't get enough points on the board.
Yeah.
Well, Lachie Newell played another good game for 2 weeks in a row. I mean, pushing, what do you get, 28, 29, 28 touches. Trying to do a lot of the hard grunt in and under work, which I think is a good place for him.
Yeah, as you said, I think our midfield, particularly Fife and Mundy, have been pretty solid throughout this period of time. Barlow's obviously been out with a little bit, but as you said, Lachie Newell stood up. Our midfield isn't running too bad. As you said, it's just probably more the small forwards struggling a little bit the small defenders struggling to contain the small forwards, and probably our forward line just not functioning as well as we would like. And it's just something we just need to keep working on, and hopefully we'll manage to work it out this week. And obviously they'll do a bit more tinkering during the bye to hopefully be able to get it right. Because as I said, the draw does open up for us a little bit after the bye. So we do need to try and go in with a positive 5-4 record after this week against Geelong. All right. Obviously also this week, Peel Thunder nearly had their chance to get their first victory over in the Waffle. They were a pretty comfortable lead going into the last quarter against West Perth, and we're on top of them all day, but ended up succumbing in the last quarter by 1 point, going down. A number of reasonably good performances there for Peel Thunder, with obviously Matt Taberner leading the way with a goal kicking with 5 marks, and worked pretty tirelessly all day. And
you mean 12 marks and 5 goals?
Yeah, and Jonathan Griffin once again continuing his good form with 47 hit-outs, and probably just still not quite doing enough around the ground, as we've seen, particularly when he was in his purple patch a couple of years ago, but he's sort of certainly looking better every week. And obviously Sheridan showed it once again, a number of touches and he ran pretty hard all day with 32 possessions and 2 goals, which is probably what we want to see, some goal-kicking midfielders in particular. And Morabito once again was pretty solid, kicking a couple of goals with 21 possessions.
Ibo pretty solid too, 25.
Yeah, Everton he got 25 touches, but he made a couple of howling errors too, which probably cost them a couple of goals. And I don't think that probably would have put him in, and may have cost him a bit of selection this week as well. One of the guys would be interesting to see in particular for Peel is young Dan, Edward Dan, who's probably got some of those little skills that we've probably been looking for in our list, actually, with Walters out. He's got some good evasive skills, and he might be one of those. It may be interesting to see if he ends up being a little bit on Fremantle's radar come the end of the year, because he has shown some good parts in his game.
How did Sylvie go? Because I'm keen to see how he go, because with Crozier being out, I thought Sylvie might be the one to come in and replace him, but obviously he's not been named with only his first game back after suspension, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly not doing enough to push the door down. I mean, and certainly if you look at what other guys are doing in the team, they're all getting 25 plus possessions, and Sylvia's got 14. His work
you could probably say that Brady Gray and Jacob Ballard have put more consistent performances over the last 3 or 4 Waffle games, and really, if you're going to earn a spot of consistent effort in the Waffle, you'd probably put a couple of guys ahead of Sylvia, even though that Sylvia is the almost skill set we need in the senior side, as there's other guys outperforming him.
Yeah,
fair enough. No, I've been stuck in with barely any phone reception, so I haven't been able to get anything.
Yeah, I mean, Ballard Ballard has been a bit more consistent, but he has struggled as well with
kicking efficiency, isn't it?
Yeah, his just disposal efficiency just lets him down a little bit. He sort of butchers it a bit at times, and we just can't afford to have that at the next level, And so, but I mean, he's working hard and he's got a good size about him, so hopefully he will continue to develop. And it was good to see Menangola get a lot of touches last week as well. He got 33. So if he's sort of, he's he's sort of promising the world and delivering an Atlas at the moment when you look at him in his body and running ability. But we just hopefully he'll push a little bit harder for selection as well.
It's good to see a couple of the guys as well down in the reserves. I think we had Moller, Wood, and Vanderloo at least have a run around as well. So we've got that many players in there. We have to bump a couple of down to the reserves to have a run around as well.
Yeah, I mean, Simpson was a little bit disappointing as well. You probably expected a little bit more for him, and he's a sort of player that could potentially, if he sort of kept his head on, he could have probably been in the side this week as one of those small forwards that we could have used. So, but as I said, it's a bit disappointing. Good to see Kepler Bradley also, get another game under his belt. So he's sort of, continuing to build fitness, which is pleasing to see. You're always a bit worried the first few games coming back off that sort of injury to make sure that we don't get any sort of further, there's no further complications or anything. But so far he seems to be doing pretty well, which is good. All right, moving on to the big game this week, and obviously Pav's 300th this week, and the two changes for Fremantle this week coming into the side is, as we talked about before, Zach Dawson back after that pretty ugly-looking ankle that's been floating around on Instagram and social media, and Sheridan back after two pretty solid performances in the waffle, and out go Clancy Pearce, who, as you said, Seppo, probably didn't have the impact off the bench as a sub last week, and Crozier, who just has had a month in the sort of seniors, but just hasn't really been able to stamp his spot in there.
Yeah, I think they're pretty fair and reasonable changes. As I was saying before, I think Crozier just needs to go and find some touch, find some form. Interesting. I said on the form, I think it's an interesting choice about Clancy being dropped, but I mean, if that's what's required to get him back and playing at the level he was last year, then so be it. So Ross is obviously not afraid to drop someone that's saying, "Hey, you need to lift your game and get back to where I know you can be at before coming to play again." So I think I don't mind those two. I like the fact Silvani gets another crack.
Yeah, I'm really happy with that too.
I like the fact that it's going to be Silvani and Dawson as the two keys, and then Johnson gets to play that third tall again, not having to play a key post. I really don't like Johnson having to play as a key post. So I like that structurally with Silvani staying in for another week.
Yeah, I think I agree. I totally agree with that summation. I think it's really important that Silvani does get a couple of weeks just to see. And I mean, we've got to see what he's going to do at the end of the year. And I think this is a good opportunity for him as well to cement himself. And as you said, Johnson playing that third man up is just so important for us as the way we play, the way we structure up. It's just critical to have him.
Well, we ended up having Mzungu doing that role last week, and you'd rather Mzungu up on the wing where he's can be more dangerous rather than having to try and quell an attack.
And they're doing that without Ibbotson as a side as well. That was brilliant for us last year with that role. So it's just really good to know that we get Dawson back after having that ankle injury, keep Silvani in that side, and now we sort of keep McFarlane out for that extra week and then go into the bye. So we know we're going to get another fresh defender, and we still hold a good structure and can afford to not rush someone back, because that'd be the last thing you want. Dropping Silvani, bringing Luke back in a bit underdone and risk an injury right before the guy. So really it's rewarded Alex with a great game, and he did play a good game. And really, I think the selections this week have really been spot on, providing Dawson, he's recovered from his ankle and Hilly's over his injury. And there was also doubt about, with Ballantyne and his little cheekbone, whatever it was. And even Crowley that I saw at the airport after the game last week, he was really struggling on his ankle. I think Boak might have stepped on it at some stage, and he really tailed off in that last quarter. So
is Boak really that quick? Because he made Crowley look
I think
slow.
Crowley was
slow.
Playing last quarter. I think he hadn't covered early, and I think the injury to Crowley happened somewhere through the third, and you could tell really that he was getting away from him. So hopefully that Crowley's recovered, because he's going to have a big job on one of the two of Selwood and Johnson. So let's just hope that he's fully fit. So in terms of the, hopefully there's going to be no late change, but in terms of the way they've done these selections, it's pretty good, and I'm happy with those. And Tabber's been rewarded with the emergency for his 5 goals, and Emberson's there, so he is close. It'll be interesting to see who's held over and who's the game day emergency if there will be a late change.
Yeah, I think the also the changes for Geelong this week. Andrew Mackey comes in, who's a pretty handy halfback, and Jed Bewes makes his debut this week with George Burberry going out with a groin injury. And obviously a big loss for them will be Matthew Stokes,
he's one that always cuts up against us. And
I think Lee Spur will be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and he would be exactly the sort of player who probably would be causing us a lot of grief. So I think him out this week will be certainly a benefit to us in particular, because he does have that skill set we've struggled to contain this year as a side. So I managed to actually watch the Geelong Richmond game live a couple of weeks ago, and Geelong obviously were way on top early, but Richmond managed to bring the ball back, and it was interesting that Richmond really, once they started taking a few risks and sort of moved the ball on quite quickly, they were actually able to expose Geelong quite a lot. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of whether sort of Lyon decides to play that more conservative approach, or whether he decides just to let it sort of all go and just see if they will take a few risks in this game in particular, to see if they can get break Geelong open, because obviously it's one of the, in terms of rivalries for us, it's probably one of our, I'd say probably arguably apart from West Coast, probably our biggest rivalry in the AFL. The number of games we've had over probably the last 4 or 5 years with Geelong have always been really cracking games, and obviously they'll be still dirty on the game last year down at the Skilled Stadium, where we managed to knock them off in the final. So
Demetrio Gate, you mean?
Yeah, that's it. So it'll be interesting to see. Do you think Crowley will go to Steve Johnson after his efforts in the final last year?
Well, he's always gone to Selwood first up. I mean, he switched to Johnson in the final last year. He still started on Selwood, but then went to Johnson when he carved us up.
Didn't he start on? I thought he started on, was it Stokes or Christensen?
Christensen, I think he got tagged for a while, but there has been in the past. It's usually one of the two, and it makes sense to start him on Selwood, but you know that as soon as Stevie J gets off the chain, that you'd want to shift him on just to curb the influence. Yeah,
it's interesting. Last week, obviously, Selwood went head-to-head with Cochin as well, so they basically had their two best midfielders go to head-to-head. So it might be interesting to see whether Selwood and Fife do play on each other in the same sort of way that Richmond did last week, or whether they do go for that negating role. I think Steve Johnson is their most dangerous player in terms of setting up play. He just has that uncanny ability to see things, and does open up particularly goal opportunities for their side.
But Daniel Jackson's not really in the same league as Crowley as a tagger, so they don't have that option where they can go, right, here is a genuine bona fide tagger, can go to this guy. Like, he does a good job.
Yeah, I mean, I think Crowley probably. I mean, I think most people would agree Crowley probably hasn't been at the same level he was last year either. So
I agree on that too.
So we have to consider that. I mean, Crowley at his best, as you said, probably would certainly be a different kettle of fish. But I don't think Crowley probably has played at his best. The other option, obviously, there's two sort of niggling doubts this week with Valentine. If anyone saw the photos from training the other day with his cheeks swollen up, you have to think it'd be some sort of doubt. But
and Hill
with his knees. So
is it knee or is it a calf, or hammy? Because the ice looked like it was behind the knee, but above. It looked like it was on the bottom of the hamstring.
Because I think it was a knock. It wasn't actually a soft tissue. I think he actually copped a knock. So it might actually be the physical sort of bit in the outside where the ice was applied. So it might not necessarily be a straight, knee or hamstring. So
yeah.
And he seemed very, moving well after the game, and I think he's trained quite well. So he'll really should be right to go. I'd be more worried about Ballantyne making it up, and really just how vulnerable he may be, because you don't want to risk, when we're already short of small forwards, you don't want to lose someone like Ballantyne with having that blow up, and really he's got a target painted on the side of his face now for these Geelong players, and he might be protected by the umpires, but it won't take much, and you just hope he'll be doing everything to play, but you just hope that he gets through unscathed. And
maybe Scarlett's not around, so Scarlett's not there, so his jaw's safe.
Yeah. Before we go any further, it's probably an apt time just to discuss Pavlich's 300th this week.
Hang on, let me get the tissues.
Yeah, well, that's it. There's obviously been quite a lot of obviously the publicity over here has probably been unprecedented for especially for a Fremantle probably apart from the grand final last year, but particularly, for one Fremantle milestone, it's probably been as as much of the Freo media as we've ever had. So, and it's definitely worthwhile. I mean, you've only got to look at even West Coast, who have had all the sort of guns and players they've had over the time. They still haven't had anyone reach the 300 club, and there's only been 68 players in AFL history, VFL history, who've made it. So it's certainly a huge effort on Pavlich's behalf, that's for sure.
Yeah, one word, legend.
I'd like to just cover over a few highlights that young Sam FFC's actually put up in our thread. The All-Australian selections at, fullback, half-forward flank, centre-half forward, the interchange, full forward. He's got the 6 Doig medals, club captain for 2007 to present. He's led the club goal kicking on 7 occasions. He's won 3 Ross Glendennings. He's got a Rising Star nominee in 2000. And he's got his chance this week to kick his 600th goal. He's currently leading the goal kicking of all current AFL players. So really fantastic to see that. It was just great to see a bit of exposure over East, and a lot of media outlets and on Twitter even talking about him this week, and great to see how many kilometres he's covered in the air. I saw a cool tweet about how the distance he's covered in plays is enough to go around the Earth's equator 18 times or something, and I've worked out that he's nearly done enough Ks to go to the moon and back by the end of this year. So it's he's a well-seasoned veteran.
You should have a few frequent flyer points by now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But as you said, Valkorum, I think the word legend is probably inapt, and I think it's also like, for me, I see the word champion being plugged a lot too, way too quickly. Particularly, a lot of people, you hear the word gun and that sort of stuff, and for guys who have played 2 games and stuff, and it's, they just haven't done it. But I mean, over 15 seasons, Pav's just shown that, and and a lot of the times when Fremantle was at its lowest ebb too,
And don't forget the fact he has stuck by us through thick and thin, and it's been a lot of low times.
A lot of thin.
Yeah.
and there was obviously the talk about Port Adelaide and whether and I know that there was a lot of discussion about him getting quite a lucrative offer, and he may have been close to going. But the fact that he stayed, and ideally you'd love to see him do sort of like Croft did with Hawthorn, just to be able to finish his career off with a grand final win and get that elusive premiership, because if anyone deserves it in the AFL, it's certainly him.
I was talking to my son today over dinner, and he's sitting there going, "I hope we don't win a premiership." And I'm sitting there about to, throttle him and take him to the ground and punch him out. And he goes, I said, "Why is that?" And he goes, "Oh, because if that happens, Pav will retire."
Yeah. I think he would actually come back and defend it. I think he'd try and come back and defend it.
It's an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
When you look at the big 3, Sandilands, McFarlane and Pavlich,
would they all go if they won a grand final?
You'd hope they all don't leave at the same time, and certainly you could see all of them go this year and next, but really after that, past 2015, it's hard to see all 3 there. Yeah.
But yeah, it was an interesting conversation. It's like,
absolutely.
Well, you look at it yourself and you go, okay, I'm 32. I've played 300 games. I've probably played 150, 200 games, or 150 games in my junior club. That's a lot of game of football. That's a lot of wear and tear. And as you said, the travel he's done. Yeah. You'd think it would, finish on a grand final. It's a pretty good way to go out.
Mind you, it's a long way off yet. So
yes,
we've got to get through the victory here first. Even just getting this win's going to be crucial. The other probably crucial matchup for Fremantle this week is probably going to be Stephen Motlop. Obviously, him and Varko do have that sort of speed and elusiveness. Who do you think will go with Motlop? I mean, Lee Spur would obviously be.
Seems the obvious choice.
It seems the obvious choice, but obviously with his probably.
Well, who's the other choice? Really would have probably been Clancy Pearce.
Subin or Sutcliffe on him. You really hope this. Yeah. I'd give Spur the job only because he's been one of our, even though he's not been fantastic, he's been one of our best at handling those guys. That thank God they don't have Christensen and Stokes out there, because that's another 2 that we'd have to worry about. So hopefully Spur does the job, and we do have Subin and Sutcliffe as alternative options.
Although I'm not sure on Sutcliffe, to be honest. I've been watching him closely now for a few weeks, and I'm I'm, I'm just so uncertain on him. Like he's obviously ticking all the boxes, doing all the right things for Ross because he gets a game, and there's no, he's never, I don't think he's been a sub this year.
Yeah.
No, he's actually avoided the vest. I've been
Yeah.
keeping an eye on that because he's in my Supercoach side. And the good thing about Sutcliffe is, though, his offensive skills a lot better than his defensive skills, but he's still being played in the back line and gets the job on someone. I haven't really noticed the matchups and whether he's actually won out, but certainly when he has the ball in hand, he's very good at helping us do that slingshot. But in terms of a defensive side, you'd really need him to get a bigger body to, crunch, stick, and get better overhead.
Yeah, it just seems. I mean, I don't like using this word, but just looks like he's soft. I know he's trying, and he wouldn't be in the side if he wasn't. Whether is it just he's not strong enough yet? He's still building the body. I mean, when you look at Sutcliffe, Sheridan, and Neil, the three newer, younger guys in the side, you can see Lockie Neal has put on size and strength, but yeah, I can't see that in Sutcliffe and Sheridan as much.
I mean, they're different body types. I think the main thing you got to remember as well is Sutcliffe has never been a defender. He's always been a midfielder. He's a wingman. He played as a wing as a junior. He's not a small defender, but we haven't got a small defender on our list. And so Sutcliffe was, pretty much picked, I think, by the match committee. Who can we put down back there? And he's gone down there. And obviously, I mean, he's had a couple of howling turnovers, and that's going to come with a younger guy. But I think he's been a bit unfairly maligned because he's not playing in his natural position. I think if you saw him on the wing, he's got anyone who watched him play for East Fremantle in the waffle when he plays actually on the wing, his endurance is unbelievable. He can run up and down that wing all day, and he's actually makes quite good decisions, and his skills are pretty solid.
His run-off halfback's pretty good as well, because if you watch that round one games against Collingwood, the way that he rebounded that ball was just sublime, and his kicking, he's got a really long boot. And when he push forward in straight lines, when it's pressures on him and he's really deep, it doesn't look as good. But when he's coming out of the back line, sort of almost leads himself to be a winger. He looks really good, and that's his.
Maybe that's what I'm getting sucked into, is seeing that pressure stuff and not trying to see the stuff where he's a bit more open.
I think the other one as well, and that was why I was probably a little bit surprised that they got rid of Sloyth at the end of last year, and because he was that sort of player who has got small, he's a good tackler. Because we really don't have a small defender on our list, or someone who can take those really small type guys. We've got.
There was a young Tasmanian we had on our list last year that was very good.
Don't start.
There is a gap on our list. It really, other than Spur, that we are missing someone, and I don't know. Just looking at the guys coming through, there is a gap.
We just get Kepler, get a mullet, and you'll be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting also that obviously with Geelong. With Hamish McIntosh playing and Hawkins down forward. Obviously, McIntosh has been able to get out on the park this year and starting to repay a bit of the faith that Geelong had in him. Obviously, after last year was pretty poor, through injury. So, who do you think will? Do you think Dawson will start on Hawkins, or do you think they'll go with Sauce down back to start on him?
Probably Silvani, I reckon. He's going to be a bit more mobile and probably too much unless they play. I haven't actually watched too much of Hawkins' game plans, and if he's positioned himself as a true centre-half forward or plant him in the goal square. So I reckon Dawson will take.
You think Dawson will play deeper and play the taller guy? I mean, Dawson's 197. He's a good 6-7 centimetres taller than Silvani, so you want him playing on the McIntosh and Simpson when they go forward. You would think.
They do have Simpson and Blick halves as well, so they do have some taller guys that can go forward, and you expect him to take him.
Because Silvani's only 191 or something, 192. He's not massive.
He plays taller than that he is, though. Very, very good against the bigger bodies.
Yeah. The other interesting one, as you said, if by keeping Silvani in there, they're obviously able to move Mzungu back into that second sort of tagging role. So it'll be interesting to see who he does go with. Whether, as I said, I reckon they may initially start with Selwood and Fife, go head to head and see what happens in that regard. Particularly if Fife is able to take Selwood forward. I don't think Selwood would be great as a one-on-one defender down, if they can drag him into the forward 50. But the other one they probably do need to keep an eye on is probably Mitch Duncan. He's sort of taken he's going to another level this year. I think James Kelly's probably dropped off a little bit compared to what he was last year.
Still got a good kick though.
Oh, he does, and he's a good user of cross half back, and that's where probably someone like De Boer will need to make sure he, does does work hard to limit Kelly's influence there. But Mitch Duncan seems to have taken that next step this year in terms of being able to sort of have that impact in the midfield. So it'll be interesting to see which way Ross Lyon decides to run with that role for Mzungu.
You know what I'm worried about now with those matchups is when we actually look at our forward line and knowing it's a big occasion for Pav's 300th game and a chance to kick his 600 goals. When you look at the tall defenders from Geelong, they've got Rivers, Lonergan, Harry Taylor that plays a bit tall, and Mackie as well. That's not exactly a tall, but he can certainly go up and make it very hard for Pav. So they've got 3 or 4 guys there that can make life hard. And if we try and spot him up too much and fall into the trap as we did against North Melbourne, just hope we don't go too Pav-centric, because it's certainly one way that we're going to struggle to kick a winning score is by them blanketing our forward options. So we've really got to push guys like Fife and hopefully, I suppose, Mzungu and the other guys forward to really give me a chop out, because it's going to make hard work. And I just hope that Clark continue his great run forward. We need to really stretch those guys, and they have gone tall. Let's just hope we can get guys to get on the scoreboard.
You think Lonergan's going to go to Pav if he's deep, or Sandilands, whoever's deep? You think Lonergan's going to go to that one? So whether it's been Pav or Sandilands or Clark, whoever goes deep, and then Taylor will take whoever's the high half forward of the taller guys, and then you think Mackie would probably go to main.
Yeah, you'd think
that's a fairly. I thought that would be a fairly reasonable match up there, and then that leaves likes of Kelly, Enright, what's the other guy? Guthrie to sort of take the rest. But then
you have to think Guthrie would take Valentine. I mean,
yeah,
Corey Enright's too slow,
and
so he couldn't match up very well on him. So you have to think that Guthrie would get the job on.
They got Taylor Hunt as well.
Yeah,
they'll probably take the midfield matchup, or Ballantyne or Neil or someone like that.
Yeah, but what does that leave for De Boer then? It doesn't really leave him a tagging option, or does he go to Enright to stop that sort of clean kicking? Enright or Kelly, whoever goes on the back line, to try and curb them.
I think that's what he has to do. I think they have to do, like as you said, not be a negating role, but I think they also have to use De Boer as well a little bit going through. I know in the last couple of weeks you've seen he's getting a lot more of the ball.
He gets a little bit more open because I think they see him as that forward tagger, so they don't really. Yeah, and you see there's a couple of times in the Port Adelaide game you just see him. He's in space inside the 50, but sort of not in the centre corridor, but more closer to the boundary. So he's still giving the likes of Pav and Clark and Main and that a chance to lead up, but he's pushing up and giving that other option. And they used it a couple of times in the Port Adelaide game. I'm liking that from De Boer. He's not just the negator up forward. He's actually giving an option.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because they have, if I'm an opposition coach, you're going to say, well, sag off De Boer, because even if he gets the ball, his kicking is not terrific, let's be honest. So he's going to be your best option in terms of, so if you can play that third man up against Pavlich.
He hasn't been that bad this year, to be honest, with his kicking for goal.
His kicking for goal is excellent. It's more his field kicking and spotting up a couple of targets and hitting someone that's.
But if he's marking it 30, 40 metres out, then he's kicking for goal, isn't he?
He kicked our first, I think, against Port. That was a really good move through traffic, and it was good to see.
Yeah, and I think he knows that's what he's going to have to do to stay in the side, because if he doesn't, then obviously, he was on the edge earlier. I think we saw the same thing happen last year. I think it might have been Mzungu who was on the edge of getting dropped a couple of times and then came back and probably had a stellar second half of the year.
Just looking at the stats, he's leading away on tackles. He's got 52 tackles this year.
Yeah, granted that probably our tackling pressure hasn't been as strong as it was last year. And I think Fife even alluded to that a little bit in the on the couch on Monday. So
how casual was he? Arm on the chair.
It was very casual. So, but I think this Geelong side, it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, they played a cracking game against Hawthorn a few weeks ago, but they didn't look anywhere near as sort of strong against Richmond. I'm still hard to, they've got a lot of younger blokes in their side, so it'll be interesting to see how they sort of end up playing on sort of Saturday night, because they've got either really a lot of older blokes and a lot of younger blokes. They don't have much in between, so it'll be definitely interesting to see which way they and how they perform on the Saturday night, because obviously their best is good enough. So
who do you think we give the job to the sub? Because I really don't like the idea, even though Sheridan sort of come into the side, I like him playing a full game. So I just wonder if it's going to go to, I know De Boer's named last on that interchange, and he hasn't been. I think he's had maybe the sub role once before. You'd probably go to Subin or maybe go back to Sutcliffe if needs be, depending on the matchups. But it's hard to pick a nice effective sub.
As much as I hate to say it, I think Sheridan will be the sub.
Yeah, I'm with that one. Sheridan, I reckon.
I think Sheridan. I agree with what you're saying, Seppo, to a degree, because he does look better when he's not the sub. But I mean, Subin can play it, but I think they'll need his in and under ability in this sort of game with bigger bodies, particularly in the
Especially
midfield.
if it's going to be wet, because I think there is a bit of rain forecast for Saturday afternoon, even though it's not going to be saturated. But yeah, certainly Subin goes all right when it's a bit wet. So maybe we'll be
Saturday's partly cloudy and cool.
Yeah,
with 23 the max and 12 k's wind. So
I mean, I think it's going to be pretty. I mean, it's also going to be interesting to see what they do in the first 20 minutes, Fremantle themselves, because outside the grand final, maybe the Geelong game last year, for a lot of these guys, this is probably going to be, they'll all want to be going out to do it for PAV. There's been a lot of build-up during the week. It's going to be interesting to see how, hopefully the game, the club, the guys don't play the game before they get out there, so to speak, and, because obviously with such high emotion and everyone talking about it this week, they'll all obviously be going out to give their best. So it'll either be a really inspired performance or they're going to sort of... so I reckon after the first 15 minutes, we'll know one way or the other, that's for sure.
And you just wonder how it's going to start and end, because Geelong are coming off the bye, so technically they might be fresh, but byes early in the season state that sides struggle because they don't get the continuity and momentum. And we've got the bye the next week, so we can go a bit harder, hopefully, and push, and that might play into our favour, but you just never know.
We've got 2 weeks to recover.
Yeah, knowing that Geelong have had the week off, maybe that they might come out fast, and we've just got to make sure that we get on top of them at the end.
And I mean, it's been good. Geelong have won 4 out of 6 games coming out of the bye. But in fairness, to be honest, I haven't really checked. I mean, they could have been against really poor sides too. So you can't always take that with a grain of salt either. But as you said, I mean, they've certainly got no excuses. They're coming over fresh. They've got all their players there. So it's certainly going to be a tough game for us. But if you can't get up for PAV's 300th, then it's going to be pretty hard to get up for anything. So what do you think of the result this week, Valkorum? What's your tip? What do you think? Who do you think will get up?
I'm thinking we're going to do it for PAV. We're there for PAV. Be close though. Be 3 or 4 points. Won't be much in it.
And Seppo, how about yourself?
Well, I'm actually going to tip the draw. Well, I think it's that closely matched that I think we're sort of due for another draw. And I think the way it's going, I want PAV to kick his 2 goals, get to his 600th, and I think Geelong are going to come out. They might have a lead at quarter time, and we're going to have to peg a couple back. I think it's going to go down to less than 6 points, less than a goal either side, and I'm going to go for the draw.
All right, and I think as you said, I think it's a big game for Fremantle. I think they could really set up their season with a victory this weekend, and obviously PAV's game 300th. I think Fremantle will leave nothing to chance, or give everything they've got, and I think Fremantle will get up by 15 points this week. So hopefully it's not a 3 to 4 point game as it's been in the last. But as I said, the last few games have always been close, and it's always come down to sort of the last half of the last quarter. So it'll certainly be a cracking atmosphere on Saturday night and full house, and hopefully we'll see Fremantle do the big man justice by getting the victory. Anything else you want to add this week, Seppo, before we finish up?
No, that's it. Enjoy everyone that's going to the game. It's going to be an absolute ripper. I'm going to have to watch it from the pub in Melbourne as usual, but I'm jealous to all the guys that can get out there for it, and just hope they get a good result.
And for those who haven't listened before, Seppo, where do the Melbourne Freo supporters go down to? Which pub are you at this week?
So you want to get down to the Great Northern Hotel. It's on Rathdown Street in North Carlton. Great venue, Freo friendly, and great place to watch the game here. And
not a bad drop of beer there too.
Excellent. And thanks again for joining us again this week, Valkorum. It's nice to have you back on board.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
And Seppo, we'll see you again next week.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you. And we'll see you guys hopefully at the game, and enjoy the spectacle, and let's all cheer on PAV for his 300th. That's it for this week. Bye for now.
Thank you.